Go ahead, play the piano. I want to see this talent of yours." Those words, dripping with sarcasm, echoed through Roosevelt High School's packed auditorium on a spring afternoon that no one would ever forget. Principal Richard Whitmore stood at the podium, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips as he gestured toward the grand piano on stage. The entire school, over 800 students, teachers and parents erupted in laughter. They thought they were about to witness a joke, a prank, an embarrassing moment for a kid who didn't belong. Standing alone on that stage was 16-year-old Devin Harper, a black student from the poorest neighborhood in town, the son of a janitor, the kid who wore the same 3 shirts to school every week, the kid who ate lunch alone because he couldn't afford to join his classmates at the pizza place across the street, the kid who, according to Principal Whitmore, had no business dreaming about music scholarships. But what happened in the next 8 minutes would destroy one man's career and change another's life forever. Because Principal Whitmore had just made the worst mistake of his life. He had underestimated Devin Harper, and the entire world was about to find out why. To understand what happened on that stage, we need to rewind. Back to that morning. Back to the beginning of the day that would change everything. Roosevelt High School sat in a small southern town where everyone knew everyone's business. It was the kind of place where your last name mattered more than your talent, where your parents' jobs determined your future before you even stepped into kindergarten, and where the annual spring talent assembly wasn't just a showcase, it was a battlefield. This year's stakes were higher than ever. The State Music Excellence Scholarship. $50,000, a full ride to any conservatory in the country. It would be awarded to the most outstanding student performer at the assembly. For wealthy students, it was a nice bonus. For students like Devin Harper, it was the only chance at a future beyond this town. Devin had arrived at school that morning the same way he always did. Walking, 3 miles from the apartment complex where he lived with his father, who worked the night shift as a custodian at the local hospital. His father, James Harper, was a proud man, a hard-working man, a man whose hands were permanently stained from years of cleaning floors and scrubbing toilets so his son could have a better life. But at Roosevelt High, none of that mattered. What mattered was the car you drove, the clothes you wore, the neighborhood you came from. And Devin checked none of those boxes. Principal Richard Whitmore had been running Roosevelt High for 12 years. He was a man who believed in tradition, in order, in keeping things the way they'd always been, which meant favoring the students whose parents donated to the school, the students who came from the right families, the students who looked like they belonged. Devin Harper was not one of those students. Whitmore had made that clear from day one. When Devin tried to join the school's music club as a freshman, Whitmore personally blocked it. When Devin asked about music classes, he was told they were full, even though there were empty seats. When Devin inquired about the piano in the practice room, he was told it was reserved for serious students only. The message was clear. Stay in your lane. Know your place. Don't reach for things that aren't meant for you. But Devin had a secret that no one at Roosevelt High knew about, a secret that had been hidden in a basement for years, a secret that was about to explode onto that stage in front of everyone. The talent assembly began at 2 o'clock that afternoon. The auditorium was decorated with banners and balloons. Parents filled the back rows with cameras ready. Teachers sat along the sides, clipboards in hand, to judge the performances. And on stage, a beautiful grand piano sat gleaming under the spotlight, the centerpiece of the entire event. One by one, students performed. There was Madison Thornton, whose father owned the largest car dealership in 3 counties. She played violin, technically proficient, but emotionally hollow. There was Brandon Walsh, son of the mayor who sang a Broadway number with a voice that was pleasant but forgettable. There was Jennifer Park, whose mother was a prominent lawyer who performed a flute solo that earned polite applause. All of them were good. None of them were great. But they all had one thing in common. They came from the right families. They had the right connections. And everyone assumed one of them would win the scholarship. Devin sat in the back row of the auditorium away from everyone else. He hadn't planned to be there. He hadn't planned to watch. But something had pulled him into that room. Some voice in his head, maybe his grandfather's, that told him he needed to witness this moment. He watched the performances with a blank expression. Not judging, not envious, just watching, taking mental notes of technique and emotion and the way each student commanded the stage, or failed to. And then, halfway through the program, Principal Whitmore noticed him. Whitmore had just finished introducing the next performer when his eyes landed on Devin, sitting alone in the back. And something shifted in his expression. That smirk, that look that Devin had seen 100 times before, the look that said, "You don't belong here." Whitmore paused, looked at the crowd, then looked back at Devin, and in that moment he made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whitmore said, his voice booming through the microphone, "before we continue, I'd like to invite someone else to the stage, someone who I've been told has a very special musical talent." The audience murmured. Teachers exchanged confused glances. Students turned in their seats to see who he was talking about. Devin Harper Whitmore continued pointing directly at him. "Why don't you come up here and share your gift with us?" The laughter started immediately, scattered at first, then building like a wave. Students who had never spoken to Devin suddenly had opinions about him. Whispers turned into snickers. Snickers turned into open mockery. "This is gonna be good," someone said loud enough for half the room to hear. "Is he serious?" Another voice chimed in. "Does he even know what a piano is?" Devin felt every eye in that auditorium turned toward him, felt the weight of their judgment, felt the familiar sting of humiliation that he'd carried since elementary school. But something was different this time. Because this time he wasn't going to run. This time he wasn't going to hide. He stood up, slowly, calmly, and began walking toward the stage. The laughter grew louder. Students pulled out their phones. This was about to be the most entertaining disaster of the year, and they wanted to capture every second of it. Whitmore stood at the podium, arms crossed, that smirk still plastered across his face. He gestured toward the piano like a game show host, revealing a prize. "Go ahead," Whitmore said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Play the piano. I want to see this talent of yours." More laughter, more phones recording, more judgment. The entire auditorium was a courtroom, and Devin was on trial for the crime of daring to exist in a space that wasn't meant for him. But Devin didn't flinch. He looked Whitmore directly in the eyes and said in a voice steady and clear, "Yes, sir. I'd be happy to." The walk from the back of the auditorium to the stage felt like a mile. Each step Devin took was accompanied by whispers, by laughter, by the sound of phones clicking as students recorded what they thought would be his humiliation. "Did you see his shoes?" someone muttered. "Probably from goodwill." "I can't believe Whitmore actually called him up," another voice said. "This is brutal. $10 says he doesn't even know how to turn it on," a student joked, and his friends erupted in laughter. Devin heard it all. Every word, every insult, every dismissal of who he was and what he was capable of. But he didn't react. He kept walking, one foot in front of the other, head up, eyes forward. Because in that moment he wasn't thinking about them. He was thinking about someone else. Someone who had believed in him when no one else did. Someone whose voice was echoing in his mind as clearly as if he were standing right next to him. His grandfather. Devin's grandfather, Samuel Harper, had died 2 years earlier. He'd been a janitor, just like Devin's father. A man who spent 40 years cleaning buildings and mopping floors and taking out trash for people who never bothered to learn his name. But Samuel Harper had a secret too. Before life and circumstances pushed him into custodial work, he'd been a musician, a jazz pianist. Not famous, not wealthy, but talented. Deeply, profoundly talented. When Devin was 8 years old, his grandfather started teaching him to play. Not in some fancy studio with expensive equipment, but in the basement of their apartment building on an old upright piano that Samuel had rescued from a church that was throwing it away. The keys were chipped. Some of the strings were out of tune, but it worked. And every evening after his grandfather finished his shift, they would go down to that basement, and Samuel would teach his grandson everything he knew. "Music doesn't care where you come from, son," his grandfather used to say, his weathered hands guiding Devin's small fingers across the keys. "It doesn't care what your last name is or how much money your family has. Music only cares about one thing, the truth you put into it." For 8 years they practiced together. Every single day. Scales, arpeggios, classical pieces, jazz standards. Samuel pushed Devin harder than anyone had ever pushed him. Not because he was cruel, but because he saw something in his grandson. Potential, talent, a gift that deserved to be nurtured. When Samuel passed away, Devin stopped playing. The basement piano sat silent. The music died with his grandfather. Or so Devin thought. But the truth was, it had never left. It had been waiting. Dormant. Building pressure like water behind a dam. Waiting for the moment when it would be released. And that moment was now. Devin reached the stage steps, climbed them slowly. Each step deliberate, each movement calculated. He wasn't rushing, he wasn't nervous. He was ready. He crossed the stage to the grand piano. It was a beautiful instrument, far nicer than anything he'd ever touched. The kind of piano that wealthy students took for granted because they'd always had access to the best. The kind of piano that Devin had only ever seen in videos and magazines. He sat down on the bench, adjusted it slightly, a small detail that only someone who actually knew what they were doing would think to do. The laughter in the audience continued, but it was starting to feel less certain, less confident. Because something about the way Devin moved suggested that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to be the disaster everyone expected. Principal Whitmore stood off to the side, still smirking. Still certain that he was about to watch this kid crash and burn. Still completely unaware that he had just lit a fuse that was about to blow up in his face. Devin placed his hands on the keys, felt the smooth ivory beneath his fingers, closed his eyes for just a moment, took a deep breath. And in that breath, he heard his grandfather's voice one more time. "Show them the truth, Devin. Show them what you're made of." The auditorium fell silent, not because people respected what was about to happen, but because they were waiting for the punchline. Waiting for Devin to embarrass himself so they could laugh even harder. They had no idea what was coming. The first note shattered the silence like a gunshot. Not tentative, not uncertain, not the fumbling attempt of someone who didn't know what they were doing, but clear, confident, perfect. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor. One of the most technically demanding pieces in the entire classical repertoire. A piece that professional pianists spend years mastering. A piece that conservatory students practice for months before attempting in public. A piece that had no business being played by a 16-year-old kid from the wrong side of town. But Devin wasn't just playing it. He was commanding it. His fingers flew across the keys with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. The left hand anchored the low, thundering bass notes, while the right hand danced through the soaring melody. Every phrase was perfectly articulated. Every dynamic shift was deliberate. Every moment was filled with an emotional depth that you simply could not fake. The laughter stopped. Instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch and muted the entire room. Phones that had been held up to record a humiliation were now recording something else entirely. Something none of them had expected. Something none of them could look away from. In the front row, music teacher Eleanor Sullivan's mouth fell open. She had taught music for 30 years. She had heard thousands of student performances, and in all that time she had maybe heard a handful that genuinely moved her. This was one of them. "That's Rachmaninoff," she whispered to the teacher sitting next to her. "That's the Concerto No. 2. That piece is nearly impossible." The teacher next to her couldn't respond. She was too busy watching Devin's hands move across the keyboard like they belonged there, like they'd been born to be there. Throughout the auditorium, the shift was palpable. Students who had been laughing moments ago were now leaning forward in their seats. Parents who had been checking their phones were now staring at the stage. Teachers who had been grading papers were now frozen pens hovering over clipboards, completely transfixed. Because what they were witnessing wasn't just technical proficiency. It wasn't just a kid hitting the right notes at the right time. It was artistry. It was passion. It was someone pouring their entire soul into an instrument and letting the music speak truths that words never could. Devin's eyes were closed. His body swayed slightly with the rhythm of the piece. His face was a mask of concentration and emotion, pain and joy and grief and triumph, all woven together into something that transcended language. He wasn't just playing his grandfather's lessons. He was playing his grandfather's legacy. He was playing every moment they'd spent together in that basement. He was playing every insult he'd endured at this school. He was playing every closed door and every dismissive look and every time someone had told him he didn't belong. He was playing the truth. And the truth was devastating. The piece moved through its opening section into the second theme, softer, now more delicate, but no less powerful. Devin's touch on the keys became gentler. The music floated through the auditorium, like smoke, wrapping around every person in that room and refusing to let go. In the third row, a girl named Ashley Ashley Morrison, who had laughed the loudest when Devin was called to the stage, felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't know why. She couldn't explain it. But something about the music was breaking through walls she didn't even know she'd built. In the fifth row, a boy named Marcus. No, that name's been used. A boy named Tyler Bennett, who had made fun of Devin's clothes just that morning, sat completely still. His phone was still recording, but he'd forgotten he was holding it. He couldn't take his eyes off the stage. And in the back of the auditorium, standing near the exit, a woman named Patricia Johnson watched with her hand over her mouth. Patricia was Devin's English teacher. She'd always known he was smart, thoughtful, quiet. But she had no idea he could do this. No one did. But there was one person in that auditorium who wasn't experiencing wonder or awe or admiration, One person whose face wasn't filled with emotion or respect or surprise. One person who was feeling something entirely different. Principal Richard Whitmore. Whitmore stood stage left, still holding the microphone he'd used to mock Devin just minutes earlier. And as the music continued, as the impossible became undeniable, something shifted in his expression. The smirk faded. The confidence cracked. The self-assured posture slumped slightly. Because Principal Whitmore was realizing something terrible, something that was going to follow him for the rest of his life. He had made a mistake, a catastrophic, career-ending, life-altering mistake. He had publicly humiliated a student in front of the entire school. He had mocked someone based on their background and their appearance and his own prejudiced assumptions. And he had done it all while being recorded by hundreds of phones. And now that student was proving in the most public, undeniable way possible just how wrong Whitmore had been. Whitmore's face turned red. Not from embarrassment. Not yet. But from the slow, creeping realization that he was standing on a stage watching his own career implode. He glanced around the auditorium, saw the phones recording, saw the looks on people's faces, saw the way everyone was watching Devin with an expression that could only be described as reverence. And Whitmore knew. He knew that this moment would be on social media within minutes. He knew that by tonight, this video would be everywhere. He knew that he had just become the villain in a story that people would be talking about for years. But the music didn't care about Whitmore's panic. The music didn't care about anyone's comfort or discomfort. The music simply existed. Pure and true and unstoppable. Devin moved into the third movement of the piece. The tempo increased. The intensity built. His fingers were a blur across the keyboard, striking chords with a power that made the entire auditorium vibrate. This was the technical showcase section, the part where pianists either proved they could handle the demands of the piece or collapsed under its weight. Devin didn't collapse. He soared. Octaves in the left hand, rapid scales in the right, massive chords that required his entire arm to strike with force. And through it all, never once did he falter. Never once did he miss. Never once did his concentration break. Mrs. Sullivan, the music teacher, was openly crying now. She had taught hundreds of students. She had seen talented kids come through her classroom. But she had never seen anything like this. And the fact that it was happening from a student she'd never even known could play a student who had been systematically excluded from the music program. It was almost too much to process. Around the 28-minute mark of the performance, something else happened. Something that no one in that auditorium knew yet, but would find out very soon. A parent in the back row had started live streaming the performance on Facebook. Another parent had posted a clip to Twitter. A student had uploaded 30 seconds to TikTok with the caption, "You need to see this. This kid is insane." And the internet was watching. By the time Devin reached the final section of the piece, his performance had already been viewed by thousands of people. By tomorrow, it would be millions. By the end of the week, it would be on every major news network in the country. But none of that mattered to Devin. In that moment, there was no auditorium. There was no audience. There was no Principal Whitmore, or laughing students, or recording phones. There was only the music. Only the piano. Only the connection between his hands, and the keys, and the sound that poured out like water breaking through a dam. He reached the final crescendo. The part where the piece demands everything from the performer, where technique meets emotion and creates something transcendent. Devin's entire body was engaged now. His back arched, his arms lifted and fell with tremendous force. His fingers struck the final series of chords with a precision and power that seemed to shake the walls themselves. And then the final note, a single sustained chord that rang out across the auditorium like a bell, clear and pure and perfect. Devin held it. Let it resonate. Let it fill every corner of the room. Let it sink into the hearts of every person who had doubted him. And then silence. Complete, absolute, deafening silence. Devin's hands remained on the keys for a moment. His eyes were still closed. His chest rose and fell with deep breaths. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Every muscle in his body was exhausted. He had just given everything he had, left every ounce of himself on that stage. And then, slowly, he opened his eyes, lifted his hands from the keys, and sat back on the bench. For 3 full seconds, no one moved, no one spoke. No one even seemed to breathe. The entire auditorium was frozen in a moment that felt suspended outside of time. And then, from somewhere in the middle of the audience, a single person stood up. A girl, one of the students who had been laughing at Devin just minutes earlier. She stood up and she began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster. And then another person stood, and another, and another. Within 5 seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. 800 people standing and applauding and cheering with a ferocity that shook the building. It wasn't polite applause. It wasn't the kind of clapping you give because you're supposed to. It was genuine, raw, unfiltered. The kind of applause that comes from witnessing something that fundamentally changes the way you see the world. Students were crying. Parents were crying. Teachers were crying. People who had come to this assembly expecting a boring afternoon of mediocre performances were instead witnessing something they would tell their grandchildren about. Mrs. Sullivan, the music teacher, was sobbing openly. She pushed through the crowd and made her way toward the stage, still clapping, still crying, mouthing words that no one could hear over the thunder of applause. But Devin could see them, could read her lips, could understand what she was saying. That was extraordinary. That was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. The standing ovation continued, and continued, and continued. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It showed no signs of stopping. Because what else could they do? What else was appropriate in the face of what they'd just witnessed? Polite clapping would have been an insult. Devin stood up from the piano bench. He didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't bask in the moment. He simply stood there exhausted and emotionally drained and let the applause wash over him. Not because he wanted attention, but because he had earned this moment. He had earned the right to stand on that stage and be seen. Really seen. Not as a poor kid, not as someone who didn't belong, but as exactly what he was, an artist. And then Devin did something that no one expected. He turned, looked directly at Principal Whitmore, who was still standing off to the side, frozen like a statue. And in a voice loud enough to be heard over the applause, Devin said, "That was for my grandfather." The applause somehow got louder, more intense, because everyone understood what that meant. They understood that this wasn't just about proving a point or embarrassing a principal. This was about honoring someone. This was about legacy. This was about love. Devin walked off the stage. The applause followed him every step, out the side door, into the hallway. And even after the door closed behind him, he could still hear it. A sound that would echo in that building for years to come. Back on stage, Principal Whitmore stood alone, the microphone still in his hand, his face pale, his hands trembling. And for the first time in his 12 years as principal of Roosevelt High School, Richard Whitmore had absolutely no idea what to say. The auditorium eventually quieted down. The assembly had to continue. There were still other students scheduled to perform, but it didn't matter. Nothing else mattered. Every performance that came after Devin felt hollow, pointless, like trying to follow a supernova with a flashlight. Principal Whitmore attempted to regain control of the event. He stepped back to the podium, cleared his throat, and tried to make some kind of comment about what had just happened, but the words wouldn't come. Every sentence he started died in his throat. Because what could he possibly say? How could he spin this? How could he make himself look like anything other than what he was, a man who had just been publicly exposed as a bully and a bigot? That was certainly unexpected, Whitmore finally managed to say. His voice sounded weak, uncertain, nothing like the confident mocking tone he'd used when calling Devin to the stage. Very impressive, Mr. Harper. Very impressive indeed. But no one was listening to him anymore. Teachers were whispering to each other. Students were frantically typing on their phones. Parents were leaving the auditorium, already calling friends to tell them what they'd just witnessed. And outside in the hallway where Devin had retreated, a small crowd had gathered. Students who wanted to congratulate him. Teachers who wanted to apologize for not recognizing his talent sooner. People who just wanted to be near someone who had done something truly remarkable. But Devin wasn't there. He had kept walking. Through the hallways, out the side entrance, into the parking lot. He sat down on a curb behind the building away from everyone and put his head in his hands. Not because he was upset, but because he was overwhelmed. 8 years of practice. 8 years of grief for his grandfather. 8 years of being invisible. And it had all poured out in 8 minutes on a stage in front of people who had never bothered to see him. His phone started buzzing. Text messages, dozens of them, from numbers he didn't recognize, from students he'd never talked to, from people saying things like, "That was amazing, and you're incredible, and I'm so sorry we never saw you before." But there was one message that stood out. One message from Mrs. Sullivan, the music teacher. It was simple, just 5 words. "Come see me tomorrow. Please." Inside the school, the talent assembly eventually ended. The judges awkwardly announced that they would need time to deliberate about the scholarship winner, though everyone in that auditorium already knew who had won. There was no question. There was no debate. Devin Harper had just delivered a performance that most trained professionals couldn't replicate. But something else was happening. Something bigger than a school talent show. Something that was spreading through the internet like wildfire. The videos, the dozens of videos that had been recorded during Devin's performance were already online. On Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, on Facebook. And they were being shared, rapidly, exponentially. By lunchtime, the video had 10,000 views. By dinner, 100,000. By midnight, it would hit 1 million. And the comments. The thousands and thousands of comments. "This kid is a genius. I'm crying. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Where did he come from? How has no one heard of him before? That principal should be ashamed of himself. Fire Whitmore." This is discrimination. And that last comment, that's where things started to shift. Because people weren't just impressed by Devin's performance. They were angry about how he'd been treated. They were angry that a principal had mocked a student on stage. They were angry that this talented kid had been invisible for so long because of prejudice and classism and all the systemic barriers that keep people like Devin from being seen. By the next morning, the story had been picked up by local news, then regional news, then national news. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. They all ran segments about it. The headlines varied, but the story was the same. Principal humiliates student gets schooled in viral video teen's piano performance. Stuns school. After principal's cruel joke, hidden talent revealed how one student's performance exposed systematic discrimination. The Roosevelt High School phone lines were flooded with calls. The email inbox was bombarded with messages. Thousands of people from across the country demanding answers, demanding accountability, demanding that something be done about Principal Whitmore. The school board had no choice. They announced an emergency meeting for that evening, and by 9 p.m., they had issued a statement. "We are aware of the incident that occurred at yesterday's talent assembly. We take these matters seriously and have launched a full investigation into Principal Whitmore's conduct. He has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of this investigation. But the internet wasn't satisfied with administrative leave. They wanted more. They wanted justice. And they weren't going to stop until they got it. By the end of the week, the video had 5 million views. Devin Harper's name was trending on Twitter. Major news outlets were requesting interviews. Record labels were reaching out. Conservatories across the country were offering scholarships. Juilliard, Berkeley, Curtis Institute. All of them wanted Devin. And in the middle of all of it, Devin sat in his small apartment with his father watching the world react to something he'd done simply because he'd been asked to. He hadn't planned it, hadn't wanted the attention, hadn't intended to start a national conversation about discrimination and talent and who gets to be seen in this world. But that's exactly what had happened. And there was no going back. The investigation into Principal Whitmore took 3 weeks. But in reality, the outcome was decided in 3 days. Because once the school board started looking into his conduct, they found a pattern. A long, undeniable pattern of discrimination and favoritism that had been hiding in plain sight for years. Students came forward. Black students, Hispanic students, students from poor families, all with stories of how Whitmore had treated them differently, how he'd blocked them from opportunities, how he'd made dismissive comments, how he'd enforced rules more strictly for them than for wealthy white students. Teachers came forward too. Teachers who had witnessed Whitmore's behavior but had been too afraid to say anything. Teachers who had seen him reject qualified students of color from programs while accepting less qualified white students. Teachers who had documentation of his biased decisions going back years. The evidence was overwhelming. Whitmore had been running Roosevelt High School like his own personal country club, deciding who was worthy and who wasn't based on factors that had nothing to do with merit or potential. The school board had no choice. On a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Devin's performance, they held a press conference. Whitmore was forced to attend. Forced to stand in front of cameras and reporters and admit what everyone already knew. "I want to apologize," Whitmore read from a prepared statement, his voice shaking. "I made an error in judgment. My actions at the talent assembly were inappropriate and did not reflect the values of Roosevelt High School. I am deeply sorry for any harm I caused." But the apology fell flat, because everyone could see it for what it was: damage control. A desperate attempt to salvage a reputation that was already destroyed. Whitmore couldn't even make eye contact with the cameras, couldn't inject any genuine emotion into his words. He was reading from a script written by lawyers, and everyone knew it. The questions from reporters were brutal. "Mr. Whitmore, is it true you've denied music program access to minority students for years? How do you respond to allegations that you've systematically favored wealthy white students? Do you believe your actions constitute discrimination? Will you resign?" Whitmore fumbled through non-answers, deflected, tried to minimize. But it was useless. The court of public opinion had already reached a verdict, and the school board knew it. By the end of the press conference, they announced that Whitmore's administrative leave would become permanent. He was done. Effective immediately. His 12-year tenure as principal was over. His career in education was over. His reputation was over. Within a month, Whitmore would quietly move to another state. He'd attempt to find work at other schools, but his name was poison now. No one would hire him. Eventually, he'd end up working in insurance sales, a far cry from the authority and respect he'd once commanded. He'd never publicly acknowledge the full extent of his discrimination, never take real accountability, never truly understand the lives he'd impacted. But Devin Harper's story was just beginning. The State Music Excellence Scholarship Committee reached out to Devin 2 days after the performance. But their $50,000 scholarship suddenly seemed insignificant compared to what else was being offered. Juilliard offered Devin a full scholarship. Not just tuition, but room board expenses, everything. A free ride to one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Curtis Institute made the same offer. So did the New England Conservatory. So did the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. Devin's story had captured the nation's attention, but more importantly, it had captured the attention of people who actually understood what they'd witnessed. Professional musicians, conductors, composers, people who had spent their entire lives in music and could recognize genuine, extraordinary talent when they saw it. Renowned pianist Lang Lang posted the video with the caption, "This is what pure artistry looks like. This young man has a gift that must be nurtured." The conductor of the New York Philharmonic tweeted, "I've been conducting for 40 years, and I've rarely seen a performance this emotionally honest. Devin Harper is the real deal." Record labels reached out about recording deals. Concert halls offered performance opportunities. Major media outlets wanted interviews. Good Morning America, The Today Show, 60 Minutes. Everyone wanted to talk to the kid who had gone from invisible to legendary in 8 minutes. But through it all, Devin remained remarkably grounded. He did a few interviews, mainly because Mrs. Sullivan convinced him that it was important to tell his story. Important to let other kids like him know that talent doesn't discriminate, that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. In an interview with CBS News, the reporter asked him how it felt to become an overnight sensation. Devin thought for a moment, then said, "I didn't do it to become famous. I didn't do it to prove anything to anyone except maybe myself. I did it because my grandfather taught me that music is about truth. And the truth is, I spent my whole life being invisible, being told I didn't belong, being pushed aside because of where I came from. And for 8 minutes, none of that mattered. For 8 minutes, the only thing that mattered was the music. And that's all I ever wanted." The interview went viral too, because Devin's humility was as remarkable as his talent. He wasn't angry, he wasn't bitter, he wasn't interested in revenge or fame or making anyone pay for how they'd treated him. He just wanted to play music. He just wanted to honor his grandfather's legacy. He just wanted to be seen for who he actually was. And finally, after 16 years of being invisible, Devin Harper was being seen. It's been 3 years since that spring afternoon at Roosevelt High School, and the lives of everyone involved have changed dramatically. Devin Harper is now 20 years old and in his 3rd year at Juilliard. He's studying under some of the most renowned piano instructors in the world. He's performed at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, the Kennedy Center. He's been featured as a soloist with several major symphony orchestras. At 20 years old, he's already being compared to the great pianists of previous generations. But perhaps more importantly, Devin has remained connected to his roots. Every summer, he returns to his hometown. He gives free concerts at Roosevelt High School. He teaches piano lessons to students who can't afford private instruction. He's established the Samuel Harper Memorial Scholarship, named after his grandfather, which provides full music education funding to underprivileged students in his home state. In an interview last year, Devin was asked what he wants his legacy to be. His answer was simple. "I want kids like me to know that they belong, wherever they want to go, whatever they want to do. I want them to know that talent doesn't care about your zip code or your bank account. It only cares about what you're willing to give." Devin's father, James Harper, still works as a custodian at the local hospital. He could retire now. Devin has made enough money to support both of them comfortably. But James refuses. "This is honest work," he says. "And it reminds me where we came from. Reminds me why what my son is doing matters." As for Principal Richard Whitmore, his life took a very different trajectory. He left education entirely, moved to another state, as mentioned earlier, and now works in insurance sales. He's tried to rebuild his life quietly away from the spotlight, but his name still comes up whenever discussions about discrimination in schools arise. He's become a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when people in power let prejudice guide their decisions. In a rare interview with a local newspaper 2 years after the incident, Whitmore was asked if he had any regrets. His answer was telling. "I regret that things happened the way they did. I wish the situation had been handled differently." Note what he didn't say. He didn't say he regretted discriminating against Devin and other students. He didn't say he regretted his prejudiced assumptions. He said he regretted that things happened the way they did, as if it were all just bad luck, rather than the consequences of his own actions. Some people never learn. Some people never take real accountability, and Whitmore appears to be one of them. But Roosevelt High School itself has changed dramatically. The new principal, Dr. Maya Johnson, is a black woman who grew up in similar circumstances to Devin. She's made it her mission to ensure that no student ever feels invisible again. Under her leadership, the school has expanded its music program, increased funding for arts education, implemented new policies to identify and support talented students from all backgrounds, and in the most poignant change of all, the school's main music practice room has been renamed. It's now called the Samuel Harper Memorial Music Room. A plaque outside the door tells the story of Devin's grandfather, a janitor who was also a jazz pianist. A man who never got the recognition he deserved in his lifetime, but who passed his gift on to his grandson. A man who proved that talent exists everywhere if we're willing to look for it. The piano that Devin played during that legendary performance is still there in the auditorium, but now it's available to all students. Any student who wants to practice can use it. No restrictions, no favoritism, no discrimination. Just open access for anyone with the passion to learn. Students at Roosevelt now know the story. It's become part of the school's culture, part of its identity. When new freshmen arrive, upperclassmen tell them about the day that Devin Harper changed everything, about how one performance exposed systemic injustice and forced the entire school to reckon with its own prejudices. And every year on the anniversary of that performance, the school holds a special assembly. Students perform, teachers speak, and someone always plays Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor. Not because anyone can play it as well as Devin did, but because it's become a symbol, a reminder, a tradition that says everyone deserves to be seen, everyone deserves a chance, everyone has value. These are the lessons that Roosevelt High School learned the hard way. These are the lessons that rippled out from one 8-minute performance and touched millions of lives across the country. These are the lessons that continue to matter today. Because Devin Harper's story isn't just about one talented kid proving his doubters wrong. It's about all the talented kids who never get the chance to prove anything. All the Devins who sit in the back of classrooms, invisible, their potential untapped because no one bothered to look. All the gifts that go undiscovered because we make assumptions based on backgrounds and appearances rather than actually seeing people for who they are. How many Devins are out there right now? How many kids with extraordinary talents are being overlooked because they don't fit someone's narrow definition of what potential looks like? How many lives are being wasted because the people in power can't see past their own prejudices? That's the real question Devin's story asks us. And it's a question we still need to answer. Stories like Devin Harper's remind us of something fundamental about human nature. We judge. We make assumptions. We see someone's clothes, or their address, or the color of their skin, and we think we know who they are. We think we know what they're capable of. We think we can predict their future based on their past. And we're wrong. Over and over again, we're wrong. Talent doesn't discriminate. Genius doesn't check your bank account before it emerges. Potential doesn't care about your last name or your parents' jobs or which side of town you grew up on. These things exist everywhere, in every community, in every neighborhood, in every school, waiting, dormant, ready to be discovered by someone who's actually willing to look. But here's the thing, talent without opportunity is just potential. And potential without support is just hope. And hope without action is just a dream that dies quietly in the back of someone's mind. Devin Harper was lucky. Not because he was talented, he earned that through 8 years of practice with his grandfather. But because he got an opportunity, however brutal and unwelcome it was, he got a chance to be seen. And once he was seen, people couldn't look away. But think about all the people who never get that chance. All the artists who never touch an instrument because their schools cut music programs. All the scientists who never access labs because they can't afford equipment. All the writers who never learn their craft because they're too busy working multiple jobs to survive. All the leaders who never rise because no one ever believed they could. That's the tragedy. Not that Devin was underestimated, he proved everyone wrong. The tragedy is all the Devins who never get to prove anything, who live their entire lives with their potential locked inside, who die with their music still in them, as someone once said. So what do we do about it? How do we change this? How do we make sure that the next Devin Harper doesn't have to wait until he's publicly humiliated to finally be seen? We start by looking, really looking, at the kids in the back of the classroom, at the students who don't fit the mold, at the people we've been trained to overlook. We start by questioning our assumptions, by challenging our prejudices, by admitting that maybe, just maybe, we don't know as much as we think we do about who deserves opportunities and who doesn't. We start by investing in programs that give all students access to music, art, sports, and every other avenue through which talent can emerge. We start by hiring educators who see potential in every student, not just the ones from the right families. We start by creating systems that support talent wherever it appears, rather than systems that only nurture talent in places where it's expected. And we start by telling stories like Devin's, not because they're feel-good moments, though they are, but because they're reminders. Reminders that our assumptions are often wrong. Reminders that judgment based on appearance or background is not just morally wrong, but practically stupid. Reminders that when we discriminate, when we exclude, when we fail to see people, we're not just hurting them. We're hurting ourselves. We're depriving the world of contributions that could change everything. Devin Harper didn't just play a piano that day. He played a mirror. He held it up to an entire school, an entire system, an entire society, and forced everyone to see themselves clearly, to see their biases, their failures, their blind spots. And some people looked in that mirror and changed. And some people looked in that mirror and looked away. And that's the choice we all have to make, every day, in every interaction, every decision, every moment when we have the power to see someone or overlook them. Which are we going to choose? If this story moved you, share it. Not because Devin needs more attention, he's doing just fine, but because someone you know needs to hear it. Some kid sitting in the back of a classroom right now wondering if they'll ever matter needs to know that they do. Some parent struggling to support a talented child needs to know that opportunities exist. Some educator needs to be reminded why they went into teaching in the first place. Share it. Talk about it. Let it change the way you see the world and the people in it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about courage and resilience and people who refused to stay invisible, subscribe. Hit that notification bell, because the world is full of Devin Harpers, full of people with extraordinary gifts who are just waiting for their moment to be seen. And every one of those stories deserves to be told. Somewhere right now, Devin Harper is practicing. Probably in a practice room at Juilliard. Probably working on some impossible piece that most pianists wouldn't dare attempt. Probably pushing himself the same way his grandfather pushed him all those years ago in that basement. And somewhere his grandfather is smiling, watching, knowing that the music he taught in that cramped basement with that broken-down piano didn't just change one life. It changed thousands, maybe millions. Because that's what music does. That's what truth does. When it's finally released, when it's finally heard, it echoes forever. Devin Harper's story began with 8 minutes on a stage. But its impact will last generations. Because he didn't just play Rachmaninoff that day. He played a truth that we all needed to hear. A truth about dignity and talent and worth. A truth about seeing and being seen. And that truth, like all great music, will never stop resonating.